Good afternoon. We are Group 4 and we'll be discussing chapters 12, 13, and 14. Chapter 12's topics include the following. How productive the organization is, or the way it operates internally, depends on how a manager leads them. The first classical organizational theory is by Frederick Taylor, who sees organizations as one big machine where all the workers and their divisions are cogs and gears that need to be optimized in order to work as one big team. The next classical theory is by Henry Fayol, who proposed that organization consisted of hierarchies with a centralized authority and that workers are simply following their commands. This theory promoted the concept of a strictly top-down communication, which makes communication difficult. The next classical theory is proposed by Max Weber. He proposed that decision-making should come with rules and regulations. Next, I'll discuss the human relations approach to organizations that are far more effective than their classical counterparts. The Hawthorne Studies was a research project conducted to determine the role of lighting in a worker's performance, but it found that rather than lighting, workers were more motivated when their supervisors checked in on them and encouraged them. This is one of the first studies that sparked the idea that workers are no longer interchangeable parts of a machine. This study raised questions about the importance of maximizing workers' potential and how human psychology plays a bigger role in management than initially thought. A theory that supports a humanist approach to management is Theory X and Y. Innovations that were consistent with Theory Y include non-financial incentives regarding autonomy and feedback. These new theories brought upon changes in organizational structures such as decentralized and flatter charts, and individual workers being granted with greater autonomy and decision-making power. Another discussion that contemporary theories have inspired is the idea of separating leaders and managers, which was not discussed back then. So basically, a leader is one that is more inspirational, while managers organize and get things done. They're different but complement each other. Back then, when top-down approach was more common, communication was strictly controlled. Now, communication is everyone's responsibility, especially the higher-ups. The bottom line is that the message received and perceived is the most important aspect of communication. A good manager accommodates their subordinates and caters to them to make them feel valued. This includes accommodating their subordinates so that they feel at ease and understand exactly what is expected of them. Motivating is often listed as one of the top 5 skills a leader or manager needs.
So moving on to the third topic, manage supervisor-subordinate relationships including mentoring and providing feedback. These are the 5 primary effects on the relationship between supervisors and subordinates. There are power, trust, communication, culture, and lastly, values and ethics. These are the responsibilities of a mentor and a prodigy. They must establish together an approach for working with each other, and if appropriate, set up a development plan with agreed upon objectives. They will also need to communicate regularly. These are the steps to provide constructive feedback, which is one of the leadership communication skills needed to guide others. Feedback should include both praise and criticism. For feedback to be useful to the receivers, the feedback provider must be as specific as possible and use words that will motivate the receiver. This is the GROW model for our guide to provide feedback, which includes goal, reality, options, and wrap-up. For the fourth topic, it is about networking. It is a way of extending and connecting to communities of practice inside and outside of our organizations. Leaders need to network properly, and it enhances careers through connections. It also provides opportunities to expand leaders' spheres of influence and increases their leadership visibility and potential impact. To do proper networking, we need to prepare the 1-minute introduction to several practices, be a good listener, and make small talk.
So, chapter 13 is about transformational leadership through effective internal communication, and these are the 5 topics. The first topic that I will be discussing is selecting the best leadership style to connect with internal audiences. There are about 6 leadership styles, and the first one is visionary leaders. These are leaders who often inspire conversation, debate, and they articulate purpose and goals that appeal to those they lead. A good example is Martin Luther King, where he inspired thousands to follow him and brought about major changes in society. The next is coaching leadership style. They focus on providing strong mentoring culture to develop others. An example is David Ogilvy, a founder of Ogilvy and Mada. The third style of leadership is affiliate leader, where they take time and a deep understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of the employees, as well a trust in them to be able to foster a team environment. And a good example is Joe Torre, the manager of New York Yankees from 1996 to 2007, where he valued people and their feelings. The next is democratic leaders, which leaders that is a good listeners and very good collaborators, where they adapt and include others in idea generation and problem solving. They recognize their own limits and willingly call others to fill the gaps in their expertise or experience. An example is the chair of IBM from 1993 to 2002, Louis Gertner Jr. Pace-setting leadership are hard drivers and constantly pushing the organization to excel. However, they are not likely to hold forums with employees and choose to make decisions on their own. Example of this leadership is Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling's commanding style. This kind of leadership may work in some situations if used correctly. For example, when a major turnaround is needed or when facing a crisis. The former CEO of GE or General Electric supposedly exemplified of commanding style when he first took over GE and needed to bring a major turnaround. However, he switched to visionary style soon after the accomplishing the major turnaround. And furthermore, these are the table that would sum up the different leadership style.
Establishing effective internal communication. So this is the model for strategic employee communication model. So the core of effective internal communication is supportive management, targeted message, effective media or forum, and well-positioned staff. In supportive management, is that the employee in leadership position model the communication behavior they expect of those they supervise. In targeted message, an effective communication depends on making all message specific to the audience who receive it. The core must be consistent, but it's presented in slightly different way or even language. Effective media and forum. Most organizations have a traditional media, but it should not be taken for granted that all employees shall receive it. Therefore, they need to use multiple media. In a well-positioned staff, companies need to consider placing communication staff in order to ensure communication is integrated into the company. If the organization is large enough, staff need to be located at all levels of organization. In ongoing assessment, in order for internal communication to be effective, leaders need to demonstrate that they consider good communication to be valuable and important. In addition, companies should assess company-wide communication effectiveness formally and frequently against clearly defined goals. Mission and vision. Vision is a statement that establishes the leader purpose and the organization aspiration. And mission is a statement of the reason an organization exists that is intended primarily for internal use. In an organization, vision and mission is needed for guiding the employee. So in order to judge the effectiveness of mission and visions, it is needed to test the following characteristics. So these are the steps of building an effective mission and vision.
Next is designing and implementing effective change communication. Organizational change is inevitable, yet rarely easy. The organization's leader bear the primary responsibility for successfully communicating the rationale for the changes, the implementation plans, and the impact on the organization as a whole and on the individual employees. The leaders will need to decide how much communication will be enough and to establish how to manage the change communication effectively. How do leaders do that? Determining the scope of change communication. First is to make sure that the internal communication practices to be working well to facilitate all employees on receiving, understanding, and accepting the messages. Next is to establish the level of change being considered and thus the amount of communication necessary. For a simple change in policy, for example, the organization could probably succeed by using the level 1 basic communication. The messages still need to be targeted, but little, if any, follow-up assessment would be necessary. For a more complex change, such as the introduction of new performance measures and reward systems across all groups, leaders might choose the strategic level, using several media to ensure that all employees receive the information on the changes and holding meetings to ensure that managers in particular understand when and how to use the measures. The leader would probably follow up with an assessment at some point to make sure all employees understand the proposed changes and their impact on them. For a major change, such as merging two companies, moving the organization in a new direction, or developing new products or services, leaders would probably want to select level 3 major change and develop a complete change communication program using the following approach. The major change will be divided into 3 phases. The first one will be design, change, and communication strategy and plan. This is a very critical phase where the leader needs to develop a communication strategy that at least includes audiences, media, messages, spokespersons, and timing. The leader may want to make a team to help assist him in making changing process called Change Communication Team or CCT. CCT will help to interact with the sub-teams regarding the communication changes and help develop strategy and tactics. The second phase is launch change communication and ensure understanding. To kick it off, you will have to communicate the changes via meetings, campaign, or other effective way of communication, especially for the organization. And this should be interactive and allowing the employees to give their opinion regarding the changes and also make several adjustments regarding to it. The third and last phase is monitor results and adjustment. it is a good idea to survey the employees after it has been implemented. This will help to determine the employees' understanding and if there should be any adjustment.
Chapter 14 Leadership Through Effective External Relations. The organization's public image affects the organization's value by convincing the performance of the organization to the public through building a good reputation. Organizations achieve this reputation by having an effective external relations. This effective external relations requires a reliable communication strategy. This is the communication strategy framework. It consists of 7 steps that leaders use this framework to guide them in making a communication strategy within the organization. The first step is to clarify the purpose and strategic objectives. First, the company must know its central and consistent purpose. The common themes that express this purpose are vision, and strategic objectives. Second step is to identify major audiences or stakeholders. The company must know who are the external stakeholders that will be affected by activities that reflects the message and image of the company. Some examples of these stakeholders are public, distributors, partners, competitors, and many others, all depending on the industry of the company. Third, create, refine, and test major messages. The messages should avoid all sorts of interruptions if it reflects honesty, clarity, consistency, and meaningfulness. Fourth, select, limit, and coach the spokespersons. The spokespersons might be as critical as the message itself. Some of the criteria for someone to be the spokesperson of the company message are: he must be at the right level, he must project positive ethos, and he must receive media training. Fifth step is to establish the most effective media or forms. The company must choose the right media to deliver their message. These media must be chosen according to the identified stakeholders. The sixth step is to determine the best timing. The company must organize a sequence of scheduled events that best responds to real-world situation through continuously monitoring all relevant channels. Lastly, monitor the results. After the message has been delivered, the company must monitor the response constantly so that they know where they missed, hence they can respond with better strategy, and so that they can measure how much the impact of the message to the target audience.
So how can a company build and maintain a positive reputation? Well, according to Charles Conrad, there are actually 6 ways that a company can do so. The first one is designing campaigns to promote the company as a whole. The second one is carrying out ambitious programs to champion product quality and customer service, and then maintaining systems to screen employee activities for reputation side effects. And a company must also demonstrate sensitivity to the environment, as well as hiring internal communication staff and retain public relations firms. And the last one is that a company must demonstrate corporate citizenship. These are the ways that a company can build and maintain their positive reputation. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is when a company wants to work with the news media. There are actually 3 things that needs to be remembered by them. The first one is that they need to understand the role and importance of media, and then they have to decide the right time when to talk to the media, and they have to prepare as well as deliver a media interview nicely. In terms of preparing and delivering a media interview, there are also things that needs to be considered. The first one is preparation. By means, a company must have a strategy that includes the description and the understanding of the context, target audiences, strategic objectives, as well as the major messages. And during the performance itself or the interview, a company's representative must always be careful of what they do or say in front of the camera, as well as staying focused on the core messages. And when during the post performance, it would be great if a company can actually review the interview result if possible, and remember to build a good relationship with the interviewer, such as thanking them or complimenting them on how they did during the interview. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is how a company can handle crisis communication. As you know, crisis communications can happen, and when it happened, and before it happened, a company must already develop a general crisis communication plan by which they already communicated, so that when it happens, they can respond quickly, have the right people ready to respond with the same messages, and understand the audience, as well as leveraging the value of the web and social media, so that they could monitor the coverage. And then when it's all over, they can evaluate and see where they did wrong and what they did right to improve it better in the future. That's why the communication plan have to be revisited frequently as well. So that's all from our group. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask any of our group's member. And I hope this presentation will be beneficial to you guys. Thank you so much for watching and listening.